name is Friis Larsen. I at least recognize some of you, and maybe you even recognize me back from, well, not all of you were students here while I've been teaching. But I'll talk about security. So I'm co-head of the research group Security and Privacy, and co-head is because it spans 2 sections, so obviously we need multiple heads. But that's about it for being in management position, so I'll not be doing any commercials about new study lines or so on. What I will tell you about, and to some extent do commercials, is formal methods, and I'll try to do to motivate why formal methods might actually be even more relevant than what we might think of. And I'll do that by trying to be concrete about what is actually happening, because there is a lot of changes actually happening in the last 10 years or so. But I'll start out with the sort of, this might actually be the most controversial statement in my whole presentation, namely that if you have a computer and you put it on the network, it will be hacked, or at least there is a possibility that it will be hacked. And I don't think that I really want to sort of go into too many details because I only have 25 minutes, but that it is unacceptably insecure shouldn't really be controversial. Just today there was a story about a Danish company who lost 500 million Danish kroners due to a security incident. Last year, or the year before last year, Maersk used several billion Danish kroners. So at least it's that we have the internet and we have network computers is a huge benefit, but it also makes us hugely vulnerable. And sort of what is written in small down here is that actually this should be very frightening, because all our computers are networked today. And furthermore, a lot of things that didn't used to be computers are networked computers today. So this particular car here, even if you have heard a bit about cars are not that secure, let me just tell you this specific Jeep, why it ended up, why it is here. So imagine that you're in St. Louis. You're sitting in your car. It's a nice, oh, I forgot the brand. Well, I shouldn't say the brand anyway. It's a nice Jeep. It's a nice Chrysler Jeep. No, it's a Cherokee Jeep. And you're driving down the highway, and all of a sudden, the air condition starts blasting icing cold air at you. You are in the US, so maybe that's not that unusual, but it's kind of disturbing. It's not raining, nevertheless, all of a sudden the windshield wipers, they start going back and forth, and the sprinklers continuously spray water on your windshield. Your radio turns up at the loudest possible volume, blasting the local hip-hop radio channel. Your seatbelt all of a sudden engages, even though you are sort of in all of this really sort of trying to keep calm. Your seatbelt sort of just really straps you in, and finally your transmission dies, and since you're on the highway, you decide that the safe action is actually just to drive the vehicle off the road. This happens to a journalist who willingly actually put himself in the car and to let two computer security researchers, aka hackers. One of them is security responsible at Twitter, actually, who was sitting in a house 10 miles away from this car. It was in 2015, and what they did was actually not that new. So the journalist actually knew these two hackers because 2 years before that, they basically did the same with another brand of car. And this, again, is not something new. This is sort of, it's kind of a you might say, crusade, if you are into that rhetorics, again, against the car industry, that they actually don't take security seriously. So that cars are a networked computers, well, it's actually there's around 50 to 100, 200 in newer Volvos, computers, sort of independent OS running in your car, all connected in a network. And in that network, the policy is that if you're on the network, we trust you. Already there's sort of that, but that's basically, that's the standard. It's sort of not in Volvos, it's not in Jeep and Cherokees, it's not in Ford and General Motors. It's sort of a industry-wide standard. It's called a CAN bus. That's sort of Ethernet of cars. And back in 2010, those two researchers, or more than two actually, two groups from University of California and University of Washington, who showed that if you have, they showed that they could hack basically this network in a car, if they could sit in the car and they had access to this diagnostic plug that all modern cars have. And people were sort of generally, well, I mean, that's not very interesting. If you have access, that means that you're sitting in the car and, well, that you can control the car by this diagnostic plug is not that interesting. Then half a year later, they showed, well, basically, if we can sort of influence any system in the car, we can actually, if there's just one of these 100 systems which are insecure, then we can perform our attack. It could be the Bluetooth in the radio. It could be the sort of the infrared thing that you use to unlock your car. It could be the GSM modem. GSM modem, you say, my car doesn't have a GSM modem. Well, many cars do. A lot of cars, a lot of modern cars have the possibility that if you sort of lose your key, then you can call a number and say, please remotely unlock my car. It's called OneStar in the US. It's the same service in Europe, but they have lots of different it's a white label service, so it's called lots of different things. But it basically means that you can call your car, and car makers are doing a lot to put them on the internet so that you can your in-car entertainment system can download and stream music and so on. And this is a huge attack opportunity. So what should the car industry do? What could they have done to sort of get themselves out of this mess? I didn't realize beforehand that Mikkel was going to talk so much about war and autonomous systems, because I actually cut out my next example, so it's not there, about autonomous helicopters developed for the US military, and they didn't want to have sort of the same problems as the car makers, so they actually sponsored a lot of formal method work, and I'll talk a bit about some of it later in the talk. So what is this formal method? Well, before that, let's just say why are we in this dire situation where our computers are so insecure, and that in itself is a complete course which you can actually take here at DIKU. Some of it, so there's a lot of things. I mean, it could be that we actually have people who are doing stupid things, or well, stupid from us designers' point of view and developers' point of view. People are sort of not using a strong password. They are selling industry secrets. They are. You might have a junior developer, it's always a junior developer, who is using some weird code he found on Stack Overflow or GitHub or what have you. And these years we also, I mean, as a software person, I find some of the recent hardware attacks, I find them really, really frightening, because, I mean, that's not how hardware is supposed to work, and it sort of breaks our trust. Well, I mean, the list goes on. I'm not going to talk about all of that today. I'm only going to talk about part of that, namely the things that we, I mean, we actually also have stuff down here, but the first 4 items is what formal methods in particular are good at addressing. I actually think that Thomas might actually indirectly be talking about some of the others, but we'll see about that. So what are we looking at? So recently there was there's a sort of a database who is sort of keeping track of all the sort of public vulnerabilities or semi-public. Some of it they find them on the dark web, but I mean, if it's on the dark web, then it's still public. And they have this database over vulnerabilities, known vulnerabilities against various systems. And they make some reports once a year. And this year, sort of when we were halfway through 2019, there was just slightly above 11,000. So it's a bit more than last year actually. And half of them were was related to web systems, and 1/3 of them have known working public exploits. It means that, again, if you go to the dark web, you can actually go and you can buy a kit that allows you to sort of completely automate attack against these systems. And half of them can be exploited remotely, and it's not just the sort of. I'm actually sort of I'm a bit confused about these numbers. I'm just quoting the report. This was another interesting. So 3% were SCADA vulnerabilities. So SCADA is supervisory control and data acquisition systems, meaning that they are part of critical infrastructure like electricity, gas, and what have you. And of course, there's also sort of the favorite part down here, that 5% was actually against things like antivirus programs. Actually, all of that. But so this is sort of, it's not just, it's a real thing. And again, one of these things that can remotely be exploited, they can break down sort of huge systems if the systems are not configured correctly. And just again, when I was younger, I would say, oh, that's because people are using Windows. Well, now I'm sort of a bit older, a bit more mature, and say, well, actually, it's not just Windows. It's everywhere. So here on all Windows platforms, there was a sort of a buffer underflow in the font subsystem of some Adobe hardware, which basically allowed you to execute whatever code you desire on any Windows machine. And Heartbleed, for those of you who haven't heard about it, is again was missing bounce check. So you might have guessed which language these systems were written in, but there was a missing bounce check in OpenSSL, so that's one of the crypto libraries that's behind a lot of sort of like when you're using encrypted web browsing, HTTPS, and it basically allowed you to sort of read out the memory of the server and revealing sort of all sorts of stuff that definitely shouldn't be revealed. Basically whatever the server had in memory in RAM, so that it could be usernames, passwords, encryption keys, emails, again, lots of things could be read out. And it's without a trace, so that it wouldn't be in any log that somebody had done something wrong. So it's really, you don't know if you have been exploited. You just know that you might be vulnerable. So again, it's everywhere. And I promised that this is sort of what I will talk about, namely that formal methods can actually and is eliminating a lot of these exploitable vulnerabilities. Again, I'm happy to see that I'm not the only one with a few sort of gray hair in my beard. So you might actually think the same as I did. When I was a student, I was really enthusiastic. And then, well, I mean, formal methods just didn't really live up to its promises. It seemed that all we did was verify toy systems and gas burners, and it wasn't really that satisfying an experience. So it didn't feel like it would actually have an impact on the real world. It was a bit like this other thing I had with artificial intelligence, and there was something called neural networks, and that was definitely sort of purely in the academic camp, not able to be used because it was too impractical. Just like neural network actually sort of was worth revisiting, it might actually be a good idea to revisit that maybe formal method is actually useful. Again, I actually came back, so that's why I'm here today. So why is it worth revisiting? First of all, even though there's sort of, we might be at the end of Moore's law, computers have been immensely more powerful than what they used to be. So we can handle much bigger problems than what we used to be able to handle. So we can actually handle real, actual live systems now with formal methods and verification. We have more automation, so we have better algorithms. So if you look, there's a sort of like a competition for SAT solvers. And if you look at the problems that sort of, if you take the algorithms in that competition from 10 years ago, and you so it's not that machines just have been bigger, but there was a lot of problems that the state-of-the-art algorithms, they couldn't handle within 1,000 seconds 10 years ago. With today's systems, they will be handled with sort of less than a minute. So there's both that we have faster hardware, we also have better algorithms, and we have better infrastructure. So again, a lot of academics have worked at various systems and have made reusable components. And that's, again, sort of people out in industry have started to also realize that actually we have a problem. So at Amazon Web Services, they are actually are regular contributing at academic conferences, and there was a few years ago, there was a position paper about formal methods where they said, well, actually testing, it's really good, we use that, obviously, but the different states that the code can be in is so astronomical that we cannot do it just with testing. We actually need to formally prove that all of these states that we have no chance of actually verifying and test, we can actually prove that they are that they all satisfy some security policies. So, what is formal methods? I'll be very loose in my characteristics and not give a definition. It's more like I know it when I see it. So it's sort of like math, based on math. It's not real math. It's not like plus or minus or something. It's more like it's formal, but it's sort of like it's a math like. There might be Greek letters in there, but it should also be something that's machine checkable. So I don't want to, the difference between me and a mathematician is, I don't want to make my own proof. Well, maybe I'll make my own proofs, but then I want a machine to tell me whether I did it right or I screwed up. And I want to talk about programs or models about programs. So, in the following, everything I said should be taken with a bit of grain of salt, namely that formal methods, they might have very nice claims, but they are also very precisely formulated. And if you step outside of what's formulated, then there's no guarantees. So again, interesting stuff. So what are some real systems, and sort of just to give you a bit of, there was too many slides with only text on, so I need a figure. Here are some real systems. Spending from microkernels and compilers up here down to sort of more this is a virtual machine system which have sort of used various technologies. So formal methods, again, it's a scale. We might start with type systems. Even C's type system can be set to sometimes find an error. And then you have type systems for a language like Haskell, where you can, well, it's Turing complete, so you can do anything. And then we have sort of down here in this end, it's sort of things are really easy to use. And when you're up here, then well, you probably need a handful of PhDs to do that deal. But again, a handful of PhDs is actually, I mean, it's not that much when you think about it in the grand scale of things when you're building stuff. At least it's not when you see there's a lot of company names. So there's Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Google, Amazon again, Microsoft again. When you're these institutions, a handful of PhDs is definitely not a lot. So what are these systems I talked about? So we have first of all various operating system kernels or microkernels or hypervisors. It's all, well, operating systems. There's a C compiler Comcert, and if you're not into C, then you need a garbage collector, and Microsoft have one that they have proved correct. If you want a modern operating system, we call it a web browser. And in that web browser, if you want to run your code, so if you don't want to run JavaScript, but you want to run sort of some x86 binary code, then you can do that in Chrome at least. And Google, they have a sandbox for it, and some researchers did a much better sandbox actually. I'll come back slightly to that. And then crypto algorithms, again, encryption is sort of one of the building blocks that we use to secure all sorts of things, and we want that to be safe and verified as well. I'm running slightly out of time, so I won't go into too much detail. So the SEL4 microkernel was actually, is used in real systems, so it is used for in autonomous helicopters used for warfare, to actually make a separation about the sort of the system which is sort of crucial for the automation and things which are less crucial and which might be attacked. That's what I would say about that. ComCert, it's just to say, well, you can actually build a verified and verifying C compiler. Some researchers at INRIA did that, and now there's sort of a small project, and now the aviation industry in general is starting to sort of even mandate that in order to build or make systems for the aviation system, you should be able to compile it with ComCert, and actually you should make the binaries with ComCert. And all of this, you might think, well, is it still choice systems? And will it be slower than if I just write my system and don't have to care about that it being correct and so on? And again, no, these are real systems that actually care about performance. So the SEL4 kernel, it has the fastest known process-to-process communication path. ComCert is sort of comparable to GCC in the code that it produces. The rock salt sandbox here, again, it's a monitor so that it checks that the instruction you are performing, whether they are okay, and it will sort of check 1 million instructions a second, and that's faster than what Google had at the point. Now they used rock salt, and now they have replaced it with something completely different. The Haggle crypto suite is actually sort of faster than what was there before, and it's so fast that now Firefox is just using that library. I could say a bit more about that. It's not just sort of when we are talking about actual binaries produced, but it's also at the design level. Recently, there's a company called Semler, of a Danish office, thanks to a certain associate professor who's co-head of DIKU. And they showed how to use a query language very much like Prolog in a Java disguise to find leaks of personal identifiable information that may leak into logs where they shouldn't be, and actually sort of look at, so it's a bit like you make an SQL query over your whole code base and say, is there any code that leaks personal information into the log? And then they found a piece of code that might do that. So, what are the things to take away? There's sort of that formal methods actually works. We are at a stage where we can actually verify stuff about real systems. Maybe not complete systems, but a good way to build secure systems is to sort of compose them into independent subsystems and have sort of clear trust boundaries, and then verify the systems independently. And especially the essential infrastructure, we can actually verify those. Especially if we use the right kind of language. And speaking of the right kind of language, here's a sample of some of the research we do at DIKU, and I must emphasize that it's only a sample because we are working a lot with various programming language design as well, which is indirectly one of the major goals is to actually be able to verify programs written in those languages. But we have also made formal models and verification of smart contract languages. So that has to do with blockchain, and when you have sort of a program which is actually managing your money, you actually would like to know what does it actually mean, this program, precisely, because it's managing my money. So we have a model for that. We are working together with the maritime industry, and you're using formal methods in many different projects. Me and Michael is doing that. I'm also working with a lot of students, so generally with software fault isolation. So if you have a component, how can you isolate the fault in that component for the rest of the system? And one of the technologies is with WebAssembly, and Thomas will tell us later about using formal methods for business processes. So that's more in the design part. We have found bugs indirectly in some of Volvo's systems using fuzzing and property-based testing. But I think I'm fast out of time now. So that's the last slide. Okay. Yeah. So, any questions?
So, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, if you put a number of initiatives you have going, so which one of them is of largest impact for security purposes?
So,
what would go
so again, this was. So I have many additions that I would actually have liked to put on this slide. So I think it's hard to say what will have the largest impact, and in part because I mean it's heavily biased, since it was what I could come up with this morning when I remembered that I didn't have a slide about things at DIKU. So a lot of it is my own and sort of something I'm involved with. So the maritime connectivity platform that came out of the EU project that I was part and Michael later was part of as well. It has a huge impact because ships are even more insecure than cars. And ships are also much, much bigger. And ships are a much, much bigger part of the Danish economy. So the maritime world is in the space age. Literally. I mean, it's like back in the 60s, security-wise. So anything we can do here, I think will have a huge impact. It's looking quite promising. This software fault isolation, I think it will. It has the potential of influencing a lot of people, sort of not just in Denmark and not just sort of in the real world, because WebAssembly is used basically in any browser. It comes with WebAssembly shipped, and yeah, me and Andrej are trying to get started some initiative which will allow it to be used in more places, but will also allow us to give much better guarantees with respect to what this code is doing that we are downloading and not necessarily trust. So I think this will impact more people, and they won't even know. So but again, that's things I'm involved in. I try to avoid blockchain. People tell me that's going to change the world, so maybe it's the first bullet. I know that Thomas has some real world impact also on the Danish system, so he actually has he will tell you his story later, that he is impacting the world. So it's hard to say, but right now to me, the most important part is the two.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. I think that if there are more questions, maybe you can ask them to Kim in the break, because we're having a small break now until 20 minutes to 6.